Bimbo and I first met when I was out shooting up in the Himalayas. Our party had come upon a wandering hill tribe encamped in a clearing by the side of a roaring mounting torrent. Bimbo's mother proudly trotted up to me, followed by her 5 little puppies. Bimbo was only 2 months old, but he looked at me with his little head cocked on one side and gave a friendly bark as if to say, "Well, what do you think of me?" His mother kept a watchful eye on him meanwhile and growled when I tried to stroke him. I have always loved dogs, and I could not resist the temptation of buying the pup for the equivalent of an English shilling. We immediately became the best of chums, and he went with me everywhere. He was a Himalayan Mastiff and grew up into a huge dog. Poor Bimbo must often have longed for the snow-capped mountains and deep valleys of his old home, but so long as we were together he was quite happy. Down in the plains he would sometimes chase a jackal, but he was too big and clumsy for such sport and never caught one. Life indeed was rather tame for him. His forebears had fought with the leopard and hyena, but Bimbo had to content himself with rabbits and hares. He treated these with the greatest disdain and would often pretend not to see them, probably because they were too fast for him. When Bimbo was 4 years old, I went once again to the hills on a shooting trip on the borders of Nepal, and he came with me. I was as glad for his sake as my own to be out of the sweltering heat of the plains. Bimbo was in his element and immediately took on himself the role of guardian of the camp. My friend and I had pitched our tents close to an ancient temple, and in the evenings I often used to sit in a deck chair and watch the priests as they walked round the building, chanting prayers and ringing the bells which were hung here and there at intervals. The temple was dedicated to the monkey god Hanuman, and thousands of big langur monkeys swarmed all over the place. They were regarded as sacred and were fed daily by the priests, who treated them with great respect and awe. On the last evening of our fortnight's stay, while I was sitting in my tent reading, I heard an awful commotion outside. Evidently Bimbo had got hold of something, for there was a terrible squealing and growling going on. Rushing out, I saw that he had seized a huge langur by the throat and was vigorously shaking it. I had some difficulty in making the dog release his grip, and when he eventually did so, the poor monkey was so far gone that I had to shoot it to put it out of pain. That night, when I was turning into bed, my old shikari came to me.
Sahib,
He said gravely.
we must leave as early as possible tomorrow morning. The priests have heard about what happened this evening and they are very angry. The head priest has solemnly cursed Bimbo and they may try to kill the dog if we delay.
By way of a precautionary measure, I chained Bimbo to the foot of my bed, and next morning we left soon after dawn, getting away entirely without incident. Once I was down in the plains again, I thought no more of the matter. About a month had passed by when, just as I was sitting down to dinner for evening, Bimbo started growling, looking meanwhile toward the door leading into the next room. I asked the server, who was waiting at table, to go and see if there was anybody or anything in the room. While he was absent, Bimbo stood at my side and refused to move, but continued his growling. The bearer came back, saying there was nothing there. I then got up to investigate for myself, the dog following me, but we met with no better success. The window was wide open, and Bimbo rushed to it. It was a bright moonlight night, and I looked outside, but could see nothing at all suspicious. During the days that followed, Bimbo acted most strangely. He would start sniffing and panicky growling when there seemed no reason whatever for such conduct. I got quite anxious about him, for he was irritable and nervy, and seemed to have lost all his former high spirits. He hated to be left alone, and followed me about more closely than ever. Sometimes, he would put his head on my lap, and look up at me with those wistful eyes of his. I felt sure he was trying to tell me what was troubling him, but for the life of me, I couldn't make out what it was. Finally, I called in a veterinary surgeon. He could not diagnose exactly what was wrong, but said that the dog was evidently sickening for something. It might develop into rabies, he added, and therefore it would be advisable to muzzle him. Poor Bimbo did not like the muzzle at all, but with a house full of servants, I could not afford to take any risks. That night, I left the dog at home and went across to the club, where I played bridge till late. When I returned home, Sobrati, the Chowkidar, the night watchman, met me.
Sahib,
He said solemnly.
Bimbo is dead.
I felt a choking feeling in my throat, and tears sprang to my eyes. Nevertheless, I managed to get a hold of myself. What happened? I demanded. Where is he? With that, the Chowkidar led me to where Bimbo lay. There was a deep gash in the dog's throat, as if some big animal had bitten him. The muzzle which had made him so helpless was still in place. As I bent over the poor dog, the Chowkidar began to tell me how he had found Bimbo.
Sahib, heaven only knows how it happened. But when I saw him, there was a huge langur monkey hanging onto his neck, and Bimbo was lying dead in a pool of blood. I tried to kill the langur, but it dodged me and vanished.
You must be mistaken, I told the man. There are no langurs in the Raebareli district. Surely it was a hyena? The Chowkidar, however, who was a most intelligent man, not given to vain imaginings, vowed by all his gods that the beast was a langur, and I had to leave it at that. My mind, however, went back to the monkey temple on the borders of Nepal, and I recalled the curse pronounced on the dog. Could it be that the vengeful priests had some hand in the business? But surely the idea was preposterous. The place was nearly 500 miles away. Poor old Bimbo. I buried him at the bottom of my garden, with a small marble slab to mark the spot. Often since then, I have puzzled over the manner of his death, but the years have brought me no nearer to a solution of the mystery. It may be that the Chowkidar had heard of the incident in the hills from my servants and invented the story of the langur on the spur of the moment. On the other hand, he may have told the exact truth, as he vehemently asserted. In any case, why did the dog act so strangely for days before he died? One thing is certain. There are no langurs in the Raebareli district.